Have you ever woken up one morning and realized that the child you raised, nurtured, and sacrificed so much for now barely listens to you? It can feel like a sudden shock. One day, you're the primary caregiver with all the answers, the one they turn to for everything. The next, it's as if your opinions and experiences are brushed aside, irrelevant. If you've spent decades supporting your kids, pouring countless dollars into their education, driving hundreds of miles for their sports practices, and guiding them through life's ups and downs, this shift can be both jarring and deeply painful. Suddenly, the dynamic between you and your children starts to change, leaving you wondering what went wrong. Maybe they ignore your advice, roll their eyes when you share a story, or even speak to you with a dismissive tone. Worse yet, they might treat you like an inconvenience rather than the wise, valued parent whose insights should be cherished. It's a tough reality to face, but here's the truth. Getting angry or frustrated won't magically fix things. In fact, it often does the opposite. Anger can widen the rift, day by day, turning small disagreements into full-blown arguments that leave both sides reluctant to pick up the phone or visit. That's why addressing this issue calmly, but assertively, is so crucial. You need a strategy that lets you maintain your dignity and self-respect without severing ties with your children or saying things you might later regret. After years of devotion and love, your relationship shouldn't end in resentment or heartbreak. You deserve recognition for everything you've done, whether it's the late-night comfort you provided when they had nightmares, the money you spent supporting their goals, or the emotional energy you poured into ensuring their happiness. If you're noticing signs that your children no longer value your voice, it's time to reset the balance. They may have their own lives now, perhaps even families of their own, and in the hustle of their daily responsibilities, they might unintentionally push you to the bottom of their priority list. That doesn't mean you have to accept indifference or disrespect. In fact, there are far more effective ways to reclaim respect than shouting, nagging, or guilt-tripping. These approaches focus on self-reflection, assertive communication, and most importantly, nurturing your own emotional well-being. When you set healthy boundaries, reaffirm your worth, and show that you lead a rich, meaningful life, your children start to see the parent they once idolized. They remember why your guidance mattered so much. In this guide, I'll walk you through 6 powerful strategies you can start using today to restore a sense of respect and value in your children's eyes. Each step is designed to help you foster a more balanced, loving connection where your voice is heard, your needs are acknowledged, and your contributions are appreciated. Some of these ideas might seem unconventional, even counterintuitive, but I urge you to stay with me until the end. By applying these strategies, you'll rediscover your rightful place as a source of wisdom and support, not an afterthought or burden. If you're ready to reclaim your role and strengthen your family bonds in a positive, healthy way, keep reading. Everything you're hoping for might be just a few small mindset shifts away. You've spent your life putting your children first, rescheduling doctor's appointments, driving across town for last-minute errands, agreeing to requests even when your energy was running low. For a long time, it probably felt like the best way to keep your family close. But here's a hard truth. Respect doesn't grow from endless self-sacrifice. Respect flourishes when you show that your time, emotions, and happiness matter just as much as anyone else's. I remember meeting a remarkable woman named Margaret. In her younger years, she was the backbone of her family and community, a dedicated volunteer at her local church, an organizer of charity events, and a confident professional who never hesitated to speak her mind. But as she entered her mid-60s, a subtle shift began. She started letting her grown children make all the decisions for her. When Margaret realized she no longer recognized herself as the strong woman she once was, she felt confused and hurt. Her children's behavior didn't change overnight. It took years of her prioritizing their desires over her own, staying silent when they brushed off her thoughts, and ignoring the sting of their dismissive comments. She believed that by accommodating everything and avoiding conflict, she was keeping the peace. In reality, she was losing her voice. The hard lesson Margaret learned is that the more we compromise our own needs to earn love, the less that love feels freely given or genuinely respectful. The first step to reversing this dynamic isn't criticizing your kids or reminding them of your sacrifices. It's stopping the pattern of acting like you need their approval in the first place. Speak up, even if you worry they might not like what you say. Set boundaries, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. Value your own time and space, because once your children see that you value yourself, they're far more likely to value you too. This newfound self-respect can help you reclaim your rightful place as a respected figure in their lives. After all, while your kids may outgrow their need for parental guidance in some areas, no one outgrows the need to respect their parents. Never forget your own worth. Have you ever tried to force someone to respect you, only to find that the harder you push, the faster it slips away? Respect doesn't come from heated arguments or long-winded lectures. It's earned through how you carry yourself when tensions arise. Take the story of Frank, a retired teacher who once commanded a classroom of spirited teenagers with ease. At home, though, his grown children treated him like an afterthought, ignoring his advice and even chuckling at his concerns. It hurt and confused Frank. At first, he did what many of us might do. He argued, pointing out everything he'd sacrificed, reminding them of his lifelong dedication, and demanding they listen. But the more he raised his voice, the more his kids pulled away. Then something changed. Frank decided to shift his approach. Instead of trying to prove himself with words, he adopted the same confident presence he'd brought to his classroom. He listened attentively when his children spoke, shared meaningful insights calmly, and let silence settle disagreements rather than escalating them. Over time, his kids began to notice. Without a single argument, they started seeing the quiet strength that had made him a respected teacher for decades. Frank's calm dignity accomplished what countless debates never could. It rekindled the respect he deserved. I knew a friend of Frank's named Linda, who applied the same principle in her own family. The less she engaged in battles, the more her grown sons began to value her words. Respect isn't about winning, it's about showing day after day that your self-worth runs deeper than any fleeting conflict. When you embody that principle, you don't just change their perspective, you transform the entire dynamic of your relationship. One of the hardest truths to accept in later life is that your children aren't responsible for your emotional well-being. You love them deeply, of course, and you naturally crave their love and respect in return. But the moment they sense you're relying on them to feel worthy or fulfilled, the balance of your relationship shifts. A loving connection can start to feel like a burden. They may grow impatient, even resentful, instead of grateful. It's not that your kids stop caring, it's that human nature tends to pull away from relationships that demand constant validation or approval. When you reclaim your emotional independence by finding fulfillment in new hobbies, friendships, and personal growth, you show your children that you have a life beyond waiting for their calls. It sounds counterintuitive, but that freedom often draws them closer. I once met a kind-hearted woman named Helen, who illustrated this perfectly. She spent every waking moment ensuring her children's happiness, paying for college tuition, babysitting at a moment's notice, and rarely saying no to any request. But as her kids grew older and busier, she found herself sitting by the phone, waiting for them to call. When they didn't, she'd call them multiple times a week, hinting at how much she missed them. Instead of bringing them closer, her frequent pleas felt like an obligation to her kids. They became less eager to answer her calls, and conversations grew tense and awkward. One day, Helen decided enough was enough. She signed up for a weekly art class, something she'd always wanted to do but never had time for. She started meeting friends for coffee and even explored local volunteer programs that reignited her sense of purpose. She stopped pushing for calls or lingering on social media just to see what her kids were up to. What seemed like a small shift in behavior led to a major emotional breakthrough. No longer burdened by Helen's every emotional need, her children found themselves genuinely wanting to call and visit. They enjoyed hearing her talk about her new projects and passions. By breaking free from neediness, Helen rediscovered her independence and the respect she'd unknowingly lost over the years. The lesson here is simple but transformative. When you nurture your own interests and refuse to tie your self-worth to anyone else, even your children, you become an inspiration rather than an emotional burden. Your kids respect your boundaries, appreciate your personal growth, and see you through a lens of admiration rather than obligation. It's not about distancing yourself from your family, but cultivating your own joy, so you enter every interaction as a whole, fulfilled individual. This shift in perspective can make the difference between feeling like an afterthought and being cherished for who you truly are, a resilient, wise parent. It can feel daunting to step back, even slightly, from the very people you've devoted much of your life to raising. Yet, time and again, we see that the less you rely on your children for your sense of worth, the more they recognize your inherent value. Helen found that her kids weren't pulling away because they no longer cared. They were reacting to the subtle expectation that she needed them for her happiness. When she turned her focus to nurturing her own passions, her children naturally respected her time and made an effort to stay connected. By showing them she could stand on her own, she reminded them how much her presence truly mattered. But independence is only half the story. True respect also requires clear, consistently enforced boundaries. Many parents believe tolerating disrespect keeps the family harmonious, but in reality, it only teaches your children to keep crossing lines you never defined. Consider Robert, a retired entrepreneur who ran a successful company for decades with clarity and decisiveness. When he applied those same principles at home, insisting on basic courtesy and calmly speaking up whenever his kids interrupted or dismissed him, he saw immediate changes. Did his children love the new rules at first? Not necessarily, but when they realized he wouldn't budge, they adjusted their behavior. To set your own boundaries, start by identifying specific actions or words that make you feel disrespected. Then communicate those limits calmly and clearly. No shouting, no guilt-tripping, just straightforward statements like, "I expect us to listen to each other without interrupting," or "If we can't keep this respectful, this conversation will end." Enforce those limits every time they're crossed. Consistency is key. Setting boundaries sporadically only muddies the waters and weakens your stance. You'll be amazed at how quickly others learn to respect your new parameters when they see you follow through. By pairing emotional independence with firm, compassionate boundaries, you create a balanced dynamic where your love for your children remains unwavering, and your self-respect stays unshakable. When Robert decided he'd no longer tiptoe around his children's disrespect, he quickly learned that calmly holding his ground was more powerful than any heated argument. By responding with clear, resolute statements like, "I'll continue when you're ready to listen," he signaled that his voice mattered. His grown children initially pushed back, accusing him of being overly sensitive, but Robert persisted, reminding them he wasn't trying to change their opinions, just asking for basic courtesy. If they couldn't comply, he explained, he'd step away from conversations and situations where disrespect was the norm. Over time, his kids realized they were the ones who needed to adapt if they wanted a relationship with him. At first, they tested him, interrupting mid-sentence or rolling their eyes. But Robert never wavered. Instead of arguing, he'd quietly end the discussion until they were ready to engage respectfully. Frustrated, they eventually saw how serious their father was and began showing the courtesy he demanded. As that courtesy became consistent, their closeness grew. Where they once saw boundaries as controlling or old-fashioned, they began to view them as an expression of Robert's self-respect. I saw a similar shift in the story of Donna, a retired nurse who adored her grandchildren but increasingly felt ignored by her grown daughter. Whenever Donna tried to offer advice on health and nutrition, her daughter brushed it off, leaving Donna exhausted by the dismissal. Tired of the disregard, Donna calmly declared she'd no longer share her professional insights unless her daughter genuinely valued them. At first, this sparked resistance, but within weeks, her daughter realized the depth of her mother's expertise and felt the loss of that knowledge. By quietly reinforcing her boundaries, Donna not only earned more respect but also sparked a deeper bond with her family. The lesson is simple but profound. If you keep tolerating disrespect, it becomes the baseline for how others treat you. Standing up for yourself, whether by pausing a conversation or choosing to step away from uncomfortable situations, forces those around you to meet your standards or risk losing your companionship. It might feel uneasy at first, but true respect rarely grows without a bit of discomfort. By staying firm in your boundaries, you send a powerful message. I value myself, and I trust you will too. Over time, the children who truly care will adjust. You'll find yourself having calmer, more meaningful conversations instead of tense standoffs. It's natural for loving parents to want to provide endless financial support, emotional encouragement, or a shoulder to cry on whenever it's needed. After all, many of us grew up believing that unconditional love means limitless generosity. But here's the catch: unconditional love and unconditional enabling aren't the same. Constantly giving, especially to those who don't appreciate it, can erode respect, turning gratitude into entitlement. When your children start taking your kindness for granted, not as an act of love but as something they're owed, it's no longer a cherished bond, but a transaction they feel entitled to. The moment you try to set a boundary, they don't feel remorse, they feel inconvenienced. Take the story of George, a father who never questioned a favor. He lent money for new cars, babysat on short notice, and rearranged his entire schedule to accommodate family gatherings. George agreed to it all, but instead of grateful smiles or heartfelt thanks, he got complaints. His children wanted more, faster, with less hassle. When George finally needed their help, he found himself alone, disappointed, and resentful. It was a tough turning point. George decided he'd only help when asked, and even then, set conditions that respected his time and boundaries. At first, his kids were confused, some even angry, but a fascinating shift happened. When they realized his help wasn't infinite, they began to value it more. Requests became more polite, instead of demanding. Sincere thank yous occasionally replaced dismissive remarks. Now, some might argue that true parental love shouldn't expect anything in return, that parents are obligated to give everything. But obligation and healthy family relationships can coexist without turning you into an eternal safety net. Unconditional love doesn't mean eroding your own happiness, nor should it shield grown children from learning gratitude and accountability. By refusing to enable ungrateful behavior, you're not withholding love. You're teaching your children to respect both you and the benefits you bring. You're also opening the door to deeper, more authentic relationships where generosity is cherished, not taken for granted. If you're stuck in a cycle of giving and giving more, take a moment to ask yourself, am I empowering my children to be independent? Or am I teaching them that my resources, time, money, energy are limitless? The answer might be the key to restoring genuine respect and admiration, not through conflict but through a healthy recalibration of what it means to truly care. Once you break free from the pattern of overgiving, you create emotional space to tackle the next vital step, building a life outside your children's world so your happiness doesn't hinge on their approval. It's a heart-wrenching moment when you realize that after years of centering your life around your kids, they start to see you as someone who exists solely for their convenience. You might feel like they've relegated you to the sidelines, forgetting that you too have dreams, passions, and ambitions. But the truth is, people respect individuals who show they can stand on their own, those with hobbies, friendships, and a vibrant life that doesn't depend on anyone else's schedule or validation. By cultivating your own interests, you not only demonstrate independence, but also spark a healthy curiosity and admiration in your children. Think of Eleanor, a widow in her late 70s, who anchored her world around her children after her husband passed away. She called them daily, offered unsolicited advice, and waited by the phone for invitations that rarely came. Her kids felt overwhelmed by her constant need for attention and visited less. Eleanor found herself alone, her heart heavy with loneliness. That's when she made a life-changing decision. She joined a book club, signed up for a local travel group, and volunteered at her community center. By stepping out of her comfort zone, she rediscovered a sense of purpose she'd long lost. In an unexpected twist, the more she thrived on her own, the more her children started calling and visiting, eager to hear about her new adventures and accomplishments. Their curiosity turned into genuine respect, an acknowledgement that she was living a full, meaningful life, not just passing time. If you're caught in a similar dynamic, ask yourself a bold question. Do my children see me as someone with boundless interest and passions? Or do they picture me waiting for their visits or calls? When you prove that your happiness and identity extend beyond your family circle, you invite your kids to see you as a whole, multifaceted individual. You become someone they want to learn from, not someone they feel obligated to appease. By shifting your focus to self-enrichment, you'll find you're not just existing, you're truly living in that radiant space of self-discovery. Respect naturally flows back into your relationships, transforming the parent-child dynamic into something deeper, richer, and more rewarding. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. Respect isn't something you can demand. It's something you inspire. It's easy to feel hurt, even angry, when the people you've nurtured for so long start treating you with less regard or consideration. You might wonder why your children don't value your advice or care about your feelings. But the truth is, you can't force respect from anyone, not even your kids. Instead, you earn it through how you live, the boundaries you set, and the way you treat yourself with dignity. If you find yourself feeling wounded or frustrated because your children are treating you as less important, I encourage you to shift your perspective. It's not about fighting to win their respect, demanding it, or reminding them of everything you've done for them. That often leads to more frustration and distance. Instead, step back and consider what you can do differently to earn the respect you deserve. The answer lies in how you carry yourself around them, the boundaries you establish, and how you live your life outside your role as a parent. One of the first steps is to stop chasing their approval. You may have spent your life putting their needs first, but here's the painful truth. The more you seek their validation, the less they respect you. When you constantly prioritize their needs over your own, you teach them that your feelings don't matter. And when that happens, it's easy for them to dismiss you. The key is to stop looking for their validation. Instead, validate yourself. Show them that your worth doesn't depend on their approval. When you stop needing it, you might be surprised at how naturally respect follows. Another critical step is leading by example. If your children dismiss your opinions, talk over you, or treat you disrespectfully, your first instinct might be to argue, to remind them of everything you've done, but arguing only reinforces their belief that they have power over you. Respect isn't won through words, but through your presence, through how you respond when others test your patience. If you react to disrespect with anger, all you're doing is validating their belief that they can control you. But when you respond with calm confidence, your dignity speaks louder than any argument could. By showing them what self-respect looks like, you'll notice a shift in how they treat you. They'll slowly start to value you as the dignified individual you truly are. But there's one more thing you must do: build a life outside of them. For many parents, it's easy to fall into the trap of making your children the center of your universe. But as they grow up, that dynamic can shift. Your happiness can no longer revolve around their approval or attention. People respect those who have a sense of fulfillment outside their family roles. If your children see you as someone who pursues your own passions, stands independently, and creates a life full of joy and purpose, they'll begin to respect your presence, not because they have to, but because they genuinely admire you. Think of Helen again, the woman who spent years pouring her energy into her children's lives. When they grew busy, she waited by the phone, hoping for a call that never came. Finally, she made a choice. She wasn't going to wait anymore. She joined a book club, traveled with friends, and gave herself space to grow beyond her role as a mother. What happened? Her children started reaching out more. They respected her independence, admired her new passions, and most importantly, saw her as someone whose life extended beyond their own. This shift didn't just bring them closer, it changed how they viewed her with a newfound appreciation and respect. If your children aren't respecting you the way you think they should, ask yourself, do they see me as someone with a full, meaningful life, or do they see me as someone waiting for their attention, whose happiness depends entirely on their approval? When you show them that you can stand on your own, that you're fulfilled by your own purpose, you'll start to see them treat you differently. The more you focus on living a life that isn't defined by their actions or opinions, the more they'll recognize the incredible person you are. They'll stop seeing you as someone who needs them and start seeing you as someone worthy of respect, simply by being yourself. Thank you for taking the time to read this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What's one action you can take today to start earning the respect you deserve? Share your story, and if you found this guide helpful, please consider subscribing for more valuable insights. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep creating content that inspires and empowers you. Remember, you don't have to demand respect. When you live with purpose and dignity, it comes back to you naturally, not because you chased it, but because you earned it by being true to yourself.